I've been a member here since 1990, and I'm here to talk with you tonight about the Earth Stewards Group. Well, who in the heck are these guys? And what kind of shady things are they up to? Maybe I want to join them in all their clandestine things that they're doing. But it's a very informal group, and we won't ask you to even keep any minutes because we don't have a treasurer, we don't keep minutes. We just meet together as a group because we like this stuff. Next slide, Nancy, please. We started about a year ago, and I'm here to tell you that I am not Larry Ruth. Now, maybe we're about the same height, but everything else is different. We do meet. Typically, the last Tuesday of the month is when we meet, and we meet via Zoom, so you can join us if you'd like. Typically, we have a dozen people. Sometimes we have a little bit less, and Larry emails out the agenda ahead of time. Let's go ahead, Nancy. Stewardship is what this group is about. And so we start in Genesis book 1. You know, God doesn't wait to tell us, this is what we're giving you. And it's yours to take care of. It's yours to use. And we also are reminded in the 24th Psalm, you know, everything that here doesn't really belong to us. We're just here temporarily. So we all belong to God, all the resources of the earth belong to God, and so forth. So what is this group actually up to? Well, we focus on education. Well, doggone it, why should I care? Well, you know, being a lifelong learner is a good thing. And we want to serve as a forum where people can actually talk about what they have questions about, or what they've read, or what they maybe have heard. You know, if we look at social media today, which a lot of us use, probably all of us use to some extent, you know, there's not an editor for whatever gets posted. And so we have to examine that and say, well, is this really factual? Or is it something that I should not give credibility to? So we serve as a forum to really just get together and have a conversation. We're going to be using things out of newspaper articles and so on and so forth. But we also talk about what does God say about this, about being an earth steward. And when I was putting the PowerPoint together, there are over 100 passages. I spared you, I only showed you 2, okay? There's over 100 passages where we as humans, the human race, are directed to be stewards of the resources we've been given. And of course, in this group, we talk about, can I make better choices? And it makes me think about that Maya Angelou quote. You know, she said, when I knew this much, this is what I did. But if I know more and I can do better, now I can actually take better actions in my choices. And we also coordinate with other houses of worship here in Lincoln on a couple different fronts. So a typical meeting is an hour. That's the rule. You know, we don't want to be there and debate and argue and so on and so forth. That's not what this is about. Of course, since Larry's the facilitator, we talk about legal things. What's going on in the unicameral? What's going on at the city level? What's going on at the federal level? You know, the other day, Larry said that he worked on the Clean Air and the Clean Water Act, which were both passed in the early 1970s, which some of us here would remember. And we also talk about what's in the news. Well, some of us have probably been to Yellowstone before. Now when we go back, the roads are going to be different. Well, that's been on the news. You can see pictures. They've told us, can't come back for a while. When you come back, things are going to look different. And we have been talking about the long-term drought. I just have a couple of examples up there. You know, the terrible long-term drought in California. We've been talking about that. And then, of course, too much water in Yellowstone. Why can't they, you know, pass some of that stuff back and forth? We've also talked about the war in Ukraine, because the war in Ukraine has a lot of impact on the resources that and things that go to Europe, the resources for the people that live in Ukraine and so forth. And we also reviewed the IPCC report, which came out earlier this year. And that's not just casual reading, at least for me. So Doug Wysocki is a soil scientist, and he was able to come to a couple of meetings and serve as a translator. If we look at this chart, here's what they're really telling us. And we also talk about, your stewards also talk about events. Well, for example, we just had Arbor Day, where I used to work, the Arbor Day Foundation. And Arbor Day is always in April. We talked about Earth Day. How many people here had Earth Day start when you were growing up, high school or college? Okay, that started about 1970. We also talked about last summer, LAS had an electric vehicle event. You could go down to Haymarket Park, you could drive a Ford, you could drive a BMW, you could drive a whatever. And we also talked about our involvement, Aldersgate involvement with Tree Sabbath. And we've already had one this year. We had one last winter, we had one this spring, and we have 2 more coming. So Faith to Forest. Well, we keep hearing about Faith to Forest. Well, really, what is this? Well, there are about 30 faith communities in Lincoln that belong to Faith to Forest. And it started because this was the 150th anniversary of Arbor Day this last April. And trees are really pretty important in the overall scheme of things. We belong to this group, Faith to Forest, and so we focus on having a tree Sabbath in your house of worship. We focus on education on trees, and we focus on advocacy. In other words, plant a tree in your yard. It's Arbor Day, go home and celebrate. Or if you have a grandkid with a birthday, they've got space in their yard, plant a tree. You say, well, I live in an apartment, can't plant a tree. It's okay. You can go out to various organizations on a website and you can have trees planted, to honor grandparents, to honor somebody's anniversary, to honor a birthday and so forth, and they'll plant those trees in national forests. So we belong to Faith to Forest for that reason, and we're not alone. Some of the first churches that started were Westminster Presbyterian. Aldersgate was one of the first, and then the Methodist Church downtown, what is that, St. Paul's? St. Paul's. Those were some of the early joiners, and now we're up to about 30 churches. So next slide, Nancy. So the focus of this group, we live it in the here and now, and everybody's talking about mindfulness, lived in today, and so forth. But really, our focus is on the future. So we have to continue to learn, whether it's somebody bringing in information from an OLLI class. Some people here are probably members of OLLI. It's hosted through the university. Some of us get the ARP newsletters. There are, some of us belong to Nebraska Public Media. Nebraska Educational TV. People can watch for free. And there are a lot of really great shows on there. If you pay attention, you have to kind of look and see what they're offering. And this group is not about reinventing the wheel. We don't want to sit there and think of everything we need to try to think of. So I think it was Picasso who said something like, being a copycat is not all bad. And in art, you always copy from what other people have done ahead of you. So we're not going to reinvent the wheel. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to use the National Audubon Society's Guide to Climate Action, your Guide to Climate Action. This has 4 different sections in here, and they have everything about going to the farmer's market, to how to write a letter to the editor, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure that we're going to use every step that they have in here, but they have a lot of really good guidance so that we don't have to sit and try to come up with stuff ourselves. They have things that we can do that are meaningful. The other resource we're going to rely on is Robert Henson's book, The Thinking Person's Guide to Climate Change. And Robert Henson is a meteorologist by trade. But this book is actually readable. You know, the IPCC report that I said we had read in the group earlier, and we had to have Doug Wysocki translate it for us. This is very much readable for the layperson, and you don't have to read it from front to back. You can just go in and pick certain sections that you're interested in, focusing on. So we'll be using this. And we also anticipate having some guest speakers. There are great people here locally. Most of us know that Martha Shulsky is the head of the Drought Center on East Campus of the university. She's like the state's meteorologist, or I'm not sure I got that title right, but there are people from the Nebraska Forest Service that can come in, talk with us. LAS has hosted numerous Zoom classes and meetings, other experts from the university and so forth. So we anticipate making that available to the congregation, whoever that we contact and whatever topic that we'd like to cover that you might be interested in. So this is a group thing, just like being members of Aldersgate. You know, we're in this together. There's not any roadmap to follow. You know, if I'm going to build a house, I can go with a blueprint. Even if I get sick, you know, most doctors are going to come up with a plan to follow and so forth to treat me. But being an earth steward, well, everybody has their own opinions. So that's why we're relying on some of these other resources that have already been produced. And an important thing about this group is we need to learn to talk with each other. And people, you know, we read the newspaper about civil discourse. And sometimes this is hard to talk about, and people don't always agree. But probably when most of us were younger, things were not quite as divisive as what you see on the newscasts at night and so forth. But we have to talk together, just like other things in church, because if we want to move forward, then we have to be able to come together and make those steps and so forth. It's not only our generation, people who exist today, but we're focusing on the future because the choices that are made are going to affect people who are going to live in, I can't think of the right term. Their day is going to come tomorrow. They're going to live in the future. And even Tom Osborne said here a couple of years ago, how old is he now, 85? This is a couple of years ago, he said, well, you know, all you got to do is look at me and realize that I have more years behind me than I have ahead of me, okay? So he said, I'm trying to make good use of my time. And that's the same thing, that's the same way that I feel about myself. You know, if you're going to live to be 175, great, but I'm not going to be there with you probably. So the choices that we make today matter because it's going to be grandkids, nieces and nephews, our great-grandkids and so forth that are going to look back and hopefully say, you know, I was really glad when this happened because it changed how we ran the railroads or whatever that it was. There are different systems that the earth has, you know, system of air, system of water, system of land, and so forth. You know, we didn't used to do no-till or low-till farming. We used to do make huge furrows. So those are the things about working together, that choices that we can make to leave. And when we make our flight to the upper story here, we can leave things in good shape and in good hands for the people that are still going to be here on the earth when we're gone. So that's what the group is up to, and you can see that we're all pretty shady characters, in what we're talking about. It's not always easy. Some of it is a lot of fun, and it's also very interesting to look at where we've come, how we've conquered various things in the past, and how we've benefited from things like the Clean Air and Water Acts that were passed in the early 1970s. I don't know if you remember, I happened to have a business trip to Chicago in 1979 or so, and the Chicago River goes through downtown, and I had an aunt who was living there, so I called her and I said, let's go out for dinner. So we went out, and where I was taking class at IBM, we were up in some skyscraper. And I said, gosh, your river looks pretty ugly. And the Chicago River was kind of this greenish, brackish color. And she said, well, they've actually improved things. Now it doesn't catch on fire anymore. Because the Chicago River used to catch on fire regularly because of all the manufacturing stuff and who knows what that got dumped into it. So it's that's kind of the summary of the group. And if you have questions, please ask them. Or I have all this material if you'd like to look at something after we're done. But that's really all I had to say. And please join us. We'd love to have you. We don't always have the same people every month. Different people have different commitments that they can't make it that night or whatever. Or we have a topic that somebody's really interested in, so they want to make sure that they join the Zoom meeting and put in their 2 cents worth. So we would welcome whoever would like to join us. Dwight? I think so. First Earth Day was 1970. Mm-hmm. Yes. Kathy?
What's your dream for Aldersgate to be kind of a leader in this? We've got the gardens, and I know we do some things, and I suspect, I don't know that your group has talked about goals for things this congregation can do. I know the trustees have done a lot for making the building more energy efficient, but I wonder what other goals, particularly we as city members and small groups, what you us think about.
Well, when Tom and I joined in 1990, we had Dwight, who had his pickup, for example, and we could all bring in old cans, like if you had a Coke or 7-Up or something, and you could put them over here in a certain part of the parking lot, and then he would put them in the back of his pickup, and he would take them in and recycle them. And I think part of that was done because, well, Dwight had a pickup, and so he had the space to do the hauling, but there were some people that said, well, I don't have that many, and I feel like it won't matter. Well, heck yeah, it does matter. Because by the time everybody puts their little bits together, then Dwight has a real true amount. I don't remember if he recycled them and got money back and that went to the church, I don't remember, or if they just got recycled, I don't remember. That was one thing. Another thing, and I've been to several presentations on this point, is what do we send to landfill? So, I mean, poor Tom, he suffers along being married to me, and we've always had recycling at home. And when we started coming to church here, every event we had was done with plates and glasses, and silverware. Because, well, we know we're going to send our napkins into the trash and things like that. But we wanted to avoid sending that stuff to landfill. And so one of the presentations I went to about 10 years ago at Wesleyan talked about the importance of washing dishes. You know, dishes and plates and so forth, they're durable, okay? And they'll last. And, you know, you hear people talk about the landfill here, and, well, yeah, every so often Lincoln keeps growing, and that's a good thing, but every so often you have to expand. Well, then we have to pay for that. You and me, people that live here, we're going to pay for that. LES, Lincoln Electric System, also has kind of the same thing with their sustainability program. I don't know if any of you are even familiar with that, but a lot of times, and it's been around about 13 years now. If you add insulation to your attic, they'll help pay part of that cost. And years ago, when LED lighting was first coming out, it's not for your house, but a commercial setting. So if you owned a business or like here at church, that's one of the first things we did when I was on trustees years ago, is we converted over to LED lighting, because it not only takes less electricity, but gosh, some of these lights we put in up high, we all said, gosh, we're going to be retired and off the trustees by the time they burn out, because they last so long. So, Kathy, to answer your point, I don't think we necessarily have any goals. The group, or stewards group, has talked about steps that we can take in church, in Aldersgate, that we hope people say, well, hey, I can do that at home. I can set up my own recycling bin. Tom and I have had recycling bins for decades. And, there's little places, the city has cut down on the number of places that you can take and get rid of your, cardboard and your glass and your tin cans and so forth, but it's still there. And we have ours in the garage, because people, that milk jugs, they stink, Just put it out in the garage, or put it somewhere. You could actually put it outside if you have, containers that are enclosed. You don't want to have your neighborhood raccoons, or you don't want to have squirrels, visiting you for little remnants of food and things like that. But so yes, there are things that we can model here at church that people can take home. And I don't know if we necessarily get up and beat our chest about it, but again, it's part of that conversation. Talk about it. You go home and, Bud and Vernita will always, Vernita was always giving Bud the elbow, and, hey, let's do this. Or why don't we do that? You know how it is with husbands and wives. We got to get with it. Or there's no reason that we can't do this. So it's like other things in life, once it becomes a habit, you don't necessarily even think about it. And we all know how habits are. Sometimes they're like soft beds, They're easy to fall into, not hard to get out of. And that's, of course, bad habits. But if we can develop good habits, then that's better for what we leave for future generations when we leave the planet and go and visit or go upstairs permanently. Shirley? Uh,
Kind of just guaranteed to that on a given week, we have about 4 different trucks going down our street because of free enterprise thing, you know. And that's a lot of fuel, that's a lot of wear and tear on our streets because everybody can contract with whichever vendor they want, which to me doesn't seem like a good use of resources.
I'm not sure what's going to happen long-term with recycling in Lincoln. Tom and I are fortunate we only live a couple miles from the north drop-off site. My oldest brother lives in Oklahoma City, and what they do there is you don't have a choice. I mean, they give you 2 bins when you move into your house. One is for regular trash, and the other, and you don't even separate the stuff. It's just all in one bucket. So you put in your newspapers, your tin cans, your pop cans, your plastic water bottles, whatever goes in your recycling, and then your coffee grounds and whatever goes in your true trash. Right. And there are several people on Tom and I live on a circle, and there are several people that pay for the recycling service and then trash. Well, actually, Tom and I have such little trash that, I mean, it's ridiculous. We can carry out this little bag, and then you got to put a brick on it because you don't want it to blow away in the wind overnight, especially some of these winds we've had lately. But other people just don't get it. Now, there was an issue with plastic a couple years ago. Now, everybody's, nobody likes gas being the price that it is, but we forget there was an oil glut from 2014 to 2018. So our prices for gasoline were much lower. And all plastics, of course, are made from oil. And that they had so much oil sloshing around the world that a lot of plastics weren't even being recycled. Because they could make new, and this is a business, business people, they could make new for less money than to recycle the old plastics. There was a very good article in Fortune magazine that I read back at that time. Since then, it's changed. So recycling, even though we've been taking our stuff in, our plastics in to the drop site, I hope they're not shoving them out to the ocean, but they haven't been recycling them. Now they've gone back to recycling them because gas is so expensive that it's worthwhile to recycle plastics. So long-term, Shirley, I really don't know what's going to happen. I think part of it for us is we've got city council members. Call them up. Send them an email. Or well, there used to be, when Tom and I lived downtown, we used to be able to go to 4th and J. There was a business there. I don't remember what they were called, but you could take in all your pop cans. They would crush them and, give you a little bit of money. Not enough to pay for your dental bills, let me tell you, okay? So don't be buying pop and cans because you're going to get money back, and, your dental bills are going to be a lot higher. But at that time, they took milk jugs. And nobody else in town would do that. And you actually got paid when you took your milk jugs in. So over the long term, we're not there yet. And things are gonna continue to shift. And that's life. Everybody here has lived long enough. That's life. Adjust, adjust, adjust. That's things are not going to stay the same. They haven't stayed the same. I'm looking over here at Bill and Phil celebrating their 50th anniversary. Are they exactly the same as when you got married? Yes. Yes. Okay, so for half of these guys. And now we know Phyllis is doing all the work, so. Mm-hmm. You're right, we don't have that in Nebraska, although I'm old enough to remember, when we bought pop, which was like a treat that you only got maybe on your birthday, that you could recycle your bottles. And so when you bought the pop, you're in your little 6-pack of bottles, and you had to pay a deposit, and then when you went back next week, you took them back, and then you got a credit for them. And we did the same thing with we had a milkman who delivered milk to our house. And of course, they all came in glass bottles. And so, when the person was going to come and make the delivery again, you just put your old bottles out in the box, and he or she picked them up and put the new milk in, and cottage cheese and whatever, and off they went. So you were constantly recycling. And the unfortunate part is that they've been able to make milk jugs less expensively, but we throw them out unless we make the effort to actually recycle them. But even like I usually get orange juice in the carton, not in the jug, you can actually take and recycle that. And Tom was asking me one day, well, how do I take the spout out? I said, honey, we leave that to them. We're not going to get out some utility knife and spend our time cutting out this spout. I mean, when things go into recycling plants, there are huge separators. There's also magnets. So when things go down these belts or down these chutes or whatever, I mean, there's stuff that gets pulled out based on weight, based on if it's metal or not, and other things that, somebody down the line says, Edith, what's that? Well, I don't know, so they pull it out. They've got to handle it manually. And so they do. But recycling, the difficulty with recycling is that, the business model, it's like other businesses, they have to be profitable. And when we had this oil glut from 2014 to 2018, it was not profitable. One of the most disturbing things I read in that article about plastics is that they talked about plastic manufacturing really starting in the 50s, and basically after World War II. And most of us have plastic bumpers on our cars now. We don't have chrome and things like that. One of the most disturbing things I read in that article is they said almost all the plastic, so if you start, let's say, 1955, we'll just pick a nice mid-year there. From 1955 to today, look at all the plastic that's been manufactured, whether it's car parts, bottles, those shrink wrap things that you need a chainsaw to get the product open and out of the package, okay? They said almost all the plastics from that point to now have not been recycled. That's the issue. And one of the biggest problems is those flimsy bags at the grocery store. So, if we just use a paper bag that we can wash in the washing machine or whatever, that is so much better. And you've all seen pictures, this congregation's very intelligent. You've all seen pictures with turtles with those handles wrapped around their necks and, other critters that have been ensnarled in various plastic trash. And you read about things where they're harvesting trash out of the oceans and whatever. So, Well, and actually when I was at the store the other day, I did see, I'd never seen these before, but they had stainless steel straws that you can buy. And, well, nice. Okay, so there's the expert. The stainless steel straws are collapsible. You can just wash them again and again. If you're going to go out to eat, just put one in your pocket or your purse, take it with you, and just use it instead of getting a plastic straw at the cafe or the restaurant that you're at. Dwight, did you have a question? Mm-hmm.
My question is, I've heard that
It has been correct in recent years. Now with the price of gasoline and basically the cost of a barrel of oil being so high, recycling of plastic is now again profitable.
My other question is, do you know how much of the paper waste that we recycle actually gets used again?
I don't know the exact statistics, but it's much higher than plastic. I mean, paper is really, paperless society. How long in our lifetimes have they been talking about that, paperless society? So now they send you an electronic document. Well, I better print this, Edith, and so so it gets printed. And, maybe that's just stopping and thinking, gosh, all I have to do is I can look at this to get the information I want to see, and I'm just going to file it electronically. I don't need to print it. But paper has always been, I remember decades back, when I was still working, that almost everybody had a little recycle bucket. You had your trash bucket, and then you had a recycle bucket. And you always had a big one by the copy machine because, some people are a copier challenge. They put it in, make their copy. Oh, so this way, it's this way. So try again. Well, pretty soon, you see them recycle. Finally, wow, I got this, And in the meantime, at least that doesn't go in the trash. They recycle the ones that don't line up.
In terms of paper recycling, last night at Legacy Terrace, we had a soup line instead of being dessert. And so all of the soup cups were paper.
Mm-hmm.
I took mine home, washed them out, put them in the recycle. We have that again. I think I'm going to say to the whole group, take your paper cups home, wash them out, and put them in the recycle. Otherwise, they'll just go to the dump. Because they don't, the staff can't take time to do it. It's not, they don't get paid to do that.
So Dwight's,
As individuals, we can do it.
so Dwight's question originally was about how much paper gets recycled, and the bulk of that gets recycled in our society. I can't tell you how much, but it's a very high percentage. And the second question was about soup bowls, and I've been a couple places for banquets and so forth where they do use recyclable soup bowls or recyclable. I don't think I've ever had cups. We always used glasses, regular glasses that we could wash later. And there are also trash bags. I know we talked about this when I worked at Arbor Day, is, why are we using any kind of plastic bag? And so at that time, well, it wasn't quite back in the dark ages, but it's been a couple years. When you went and bought the corn-based, can't think of the right term, when you went and bought the corn-based liner, so many times they would give away before you even got the thing tied up and out to the trash receptacle. So they didn't have all that figured out yet. And that's part of what we all go through when we change over. Just like when we used to run our PCs. Gosh, we got a first PC and you fired it up and pretty soon it croaked. And that was just expected. Microsoft said, well, sorry, but they're just going to quit. It's like, well, we've evolved past that. At least I hope most of us have. But that'd be kind of tough. We probably had cars. My dad might say back in the day, we had cars that would go down the road, and all of a sudden they, head gasket would blow or whatever would happen, and that was the end of your trip. So those things have advanced, and we're going through that same shift of what we've always been able to do and just throw in the trash to what we can do now that's more sustainable, that we don't have to make new every time, and so forth. So Kathy has a question.
Well, it's also a comment. I don't know how many of you remember, but one of the drivers of paper recycling in Lincoln was when the Lincoln Journal-Star got a contract for its newsprint, where they had to
Thanks for bringing that up, Kathy. That didn't come to my mind, so Kathy was just talking about the Lincoln Journal-Star used to, when they bought their rolls and rolls of newsprint, that they had an incentive from their manufacturer to give so much back to them, so that the net cost was going to be lower. So, Jim, you had a question?
Yeah, you mentioned buying orange juice in a carton, you get milk in a carton and so on. But I have heard that any of those cartons that have been covered with plastic are not recyclable.
I've read that too. And, you know, the same thing about, like, if you go to Runza and you get a glass, one of their glasses, well, if they truly just make it out of plain paper, then, you know, you got the giganto 56-ounce, whatever, you take it back to your office, and pretty soon it starts leaking. So they've also put a coating on some of those when you go through McDonald's and things like that. That's probably going to take a different effort. Or if you go, drink milk. You know, they come in the little bottles, and those you can actually recycle. But that's a tough call. And Tom and I have talked about that, and I still go ahead and recycle, because like I said, when stuff goes in these chutes at the recycling center, different things get sucked out or pulled out with magnets or whatever. And so I'd rather have it go there, and they could do something good with it, than for me to send it to the landfill. That's
the more of those kinds of things that come in, it'll encourage them to do something about it.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Pastor Joe looked up what percentage of paper is recycled in 2020. That's probably the last year that they have information for, and it's 66% of paper that we print is recycled in the United States. Because, I mean, I have neighbors down the street from us, and they're not drinking out of glasses. I mean, every time I go by, their trash receptacles, all their trash can't even fit in their receptacles, and so when it balloons out, you can see all their paper plates and their Runza cups and, you know, plastic forks and spoons and so forth. So and, you know, you guys are all smart. You know that there's a price. There's a price for convenience. And now, the other issue in healthcare particularly is having something that's sanitary or sterilized. And we've all found that out in spades when the pandemic started. You know, you're gonna, I mean, I even remember going to the dentist, and we didn't even have vaccines at this point, but my dentist, like, took off his whole top when he was done with me, and he put it over a chair because he was going to let my whatever set up and come back. Well, when he came in, he'd taken off his top with, you know, Edith over here. He came back and he put his top on and then remasked and so forth to work on me. But that way, he minimized any cross-contamination. Now we know more, but, you know, things, I mean, even Jen Pearson, you know, would talk about being out of protective items when in her nursing position. So I've talked way longer than anybody probably ever wanted to hear, so I thank you for your attention, because I know Kathy wants to speak too, so. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you. Well, I'm Kathy Dombrowski. I am your lay leader. She's a tough act to follow. I didn't want to take a whole lot of time, but I know that we as a congregation are trying to figure out how to get back to normal and what that means in terms of classes and activities and adult Sunday school and all these kinds of things that we want to do. And it was suggested to me that this would be a wonderful forum for me to meet with some people and find out what you'd like to do, and I thought that was a great idea. So I don't have anything formal planned. I thought I'd start out and talk about the faith stories that we plan to do, starting with Pastor Joe in 2 weeks. And maybe I should say that this coming week, Pastor Joe and I are going to give our report to you about annual conference. And we also want to spend a little bit of time talking about what's this with the Methodist churches breaking off and the formation of the GMC, and what are we as a congregation supposed to do, if anything, and what do you want to do? And boy, there's a lot of stuff in the media, and some of it is pretty far out and far from the truth, I guess I'll say, and some of it is pretty spot on, and I have a hard time sorting it out. But anyway, so for those of you who have concerns about annual conference and what's happening in the Methodist Church, I hope you will join us at 10 o'clock, room 4 this Sunday. If you want to spend a lot more time talking about it, then we'll schedule something else down the road and delve into those topics a little bit more. But I'll just say that. In 2 weeks, I'm going to interview Pastor Joe about growing up Christian in Pakistan and his faith journey and his faith story. And he talked a little bit about these things when he first came to Aldersgate 9 years ago. You know, my memory doesn't go back that long. I forgot what he said. I remember some of it. I remember some of Nosheen's stories in particular, because she and I sat and visited one day. But at any rate, he shared some things with Book Club a couple months ago, and it was incredibly interesting. And so that'll be in room 4. It's basically an adult Sunday school class. And I have talked to a few of you about possibly sharing stories. I've been out vacationing in Colorado and doing fun things, so I'm kind of behind. I came back and went to annual conference, and now the rest of my life is sending me the to-do lists of things I should have done before I went to Colorado and annual conference and all of that. So I'm playing catch up. But some of you who I've talked to before, I'll be getting back in touch with, and some of you I know have great stories. The conference had sent out some material on faith stories, and I thought that it would be a wonderful thing to do over the summer. So many people are gone. It's hard to do a class that builds 1 week on the other, because any given week a fourth-year class is going to be gone. So this seemed like a good, fun thing to do. Somebody's asked about taping and videotape, and I don't know if we're going to do that or not. I know some people would like us to, and some people really don't want to participate if it's going to be taped. And I will say that anybody who I might ask if they want to be interviewed and doesn't want to be taped, that's fine. I don't think any of them have to be taped. I think Pastor Joe, I think you said you were willing to be taped, but maybe not. But at any rate, I'll just throw that in there because some people have asked me about that. So I'll get that question out of the way. I know that it's kind of thrown people in a loop because the powers that did Faith Links decided not to do Faith Links anymore for reasons that I'm not privy to, but it was, I'm sure, a money-making decision or something of the sort. And many people have said, who will develop the curriculum to replace that? It ain't going to be me. I'm not into curriculum development. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people are sending me these catalogs of classes, that I'm glad to share. But I'm wondering what you folks want to do. I've had the impression since we've come back after COVID that people are so glad to sit around and talk and socialize and catch up with each other between Sunday morning that while some people missed the classes, there were also people who had missed the fellowship and really wanted to catch up.
So that may have been a inaccurate perception, but boy, it's been good to see people chattering and catching up and so interested in each other's life. Yeah, Shirley.
I'm really, I don't know what it took or why they put faith links, but I thought it was the perfect scenario. Now, Steve here led it each week.
I know.
It was an easy one if Steve is going to be gone or somebody else to pick that class up. It was a one-shot thing. We found out with God Unbound that it's really hard to commit to 8 consecutive weeks.
That's part of why I thought faith stories would be good. Yep.
Yeah, the nice thing with Faith Link, it was a one shot, but it always came in about Bible references. It helped you. I feel really badly that is gone.
I feel badly too.
I don't know.
And I visited with Steve. He's not willing to put something, to replace it together. That's not.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a tremendous amount of work.
And the thing was, the people that wrote those articles were from all over the country. I just think it's too bad that the conference or national or whatever, I don't know, we're the only ones that felt that way.
Yeah. Keith?
I just want to say that, I don't know, 47 years, I worked with Sunday school teachers, Christian education person in several larger churches that I served, and I don't think we realize that our Sunday school material in the Methodist Church is not written by one body of people. It's written by individual members of local churches. And there was a woman here in Lincoln who she did that. She would write up something for a Sunday school class and then send it off, and lo and behold, it wound up being County Vacation Bible School material. And that's where it comes from. So it's not like we have this massive corporation somewhere that pumps out all this stuff like, the magazines. So that's just one thing. It's like our upper room.
Right.
It's based on the same thing. An upper room was written by individuals. It's put together. Why?
Somebody put it together, it took an organization.
It took a committee, it took a smaller group.
Assemble it, yeah. That's the way the Bakelands probably was.
Exactly. It was written by, as you were saying, by individuals who put it out. I don't know why we stopped, but if you look over the history of our church, this is normal for us. I mean, there were other magazines that I used to use with youth groups and Sunday school classes that's no longer printed. I don't know if anybody remembers the Together magazine. That's if you know it. That was a great magazine that our church denomination put out, and then it stopped.
I loved Alive Now, and I'm so sad that stopped. Jim, you've had your hand up. Keith had his hand up first, but.
I know you wouldn't choose him over me. So.
Well, oh, to have a choice.
Terry talked about nothing stays the same. And that you mentioned Alive Now, and that was the other adult Sunday school class that I was in. We used Alive Now.
Yeah.
And we were terribly upset when
Yeah.
that magazine quit publishing. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to be critical of the people in the Facebook or anything like that. It's just what we did in the other classes, we struggled. And Jeanette basically kind of took charge, and she came up with some lessons, some things to talk about for a while. But we eventually put our heads together and decided, well, if we're going to do anything, we've got to do it ourselves. Because we couldn't find anything that we really liked. And we hunted and searched. We did find some books that we used parts of at different times, and we just kind of struggled through it and kept going. But we found something to talk about.
So how would you see that working with Faith Links, Jim? Excuse me.
I don't know. Of course, the Faith Link was based on news, basically.
Current events.
And current events, yeah. There's all kinds of current events out there for topics. But the material to use with it is the trouble, of course. That's, you know, and you really don't want to get into the situation of everybody just sharing how they feel about something without more guidance. That may go nowhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't know either. I did
I
get.
did not know that they could.
Yeah, yeah. I did get some feedback from people who felt like Faith Links was pretty superficial and that they would prefer a class that took a topic and delved into it more deeply over a couple weeks, kind of like our stewards are doing, where they're taking topics related to the environment and climate and so forth and delving into them deeper. And I haven't seen any materials about that either. I wonder about general education, you know, even like high school civics kinds of materials, but yeah, Carrie. You remember what? Linda Schmeckel, uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
That's a topic that people can share. They can share a lot. If they want to, they can just listen and learn some things.
Mm-hmm.
But for a while, here, that was one thing that was done.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at, nobody wants to read, Winds of War or anything that's 1,000 pages long, but we looked at, and of course, Linda, that was her field, just like your field, Kathy, but she knew of some of those resources. They might be interesting, they were timely,
Mm-hmm.
and we could spend a few weeks on it.
And she was a great instructor.
Go on to something else.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were even books that I, Esther Fox and I taught classes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting to the titles of them, but.
Keith has his hand up again. Keith?
Most of our curriculum that was taught by the church
Mm-hmm.
was either life to Bible or Bible to life.
Okay.
And you notice the common denominator there was Bible. That's one of the things that I think when you're studying something in the church, I don't care what it is, you can be studying the life of Methodist or relating them to the Bible somehow, or our faith. And that's where it's different for us in the church to talk about all these different issues. But then how do we relate it to our faith?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that is really what drives us to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just bring that up when we're looking for things. And one of the things I've seen the Cokesbury, that's our publishing company, which is in a world of hurt because we're not buying material like we used to. They've gone to having a lot of small books that you can get a hold of to study for different things. And it's helping Adam Hamilton make a great living right now. But this is something to think about when you're trying to think about your classes.
And in that allusion, I want to say, as lay leader, I am on the education committee and agreed to facilitate or coordinate adult classes. That does not mean that I agreed to arrange, teach, develop curriculum, and organize all adult classes and programs in this congregation. I've had the feeling some people think it does, that I'm personally responsible for not having a replacement for Faith Links in place the day we took our mask off. Well, sorry, folks, it's a big congregation, not as big as some, but that's not my job duty. I am happy to steer you to resources. I'm happy to coordinate. I'm happy to converse. I love teaching, but I will not teach every adult class offered in this church. Sorry. Dwight. I know. Dwight has decided that he and I ought to teach a class on Bonhoeffer. And I think it would be delightfully fun. It wouldn't fit in my schedule this summer because my schedule is crazy. But down the road, and I do want, for one of the faith stories, I do think that it would be wonderful to interview Dwight about what drives his faith. And the other thing I want to say about faith stories is that I don't want to do all the interviews. I thought I'd do a couple of them to start, and then I'd talk some of you into being interviewees. And in fact, in my God Unbound class, I suggested to a couple people that I thought they'd do a great job doing interviews. So, and I can see at least one of them kind of looking funny, but actually, I think I now have two of them looking funny. But anyway, I'll just throw that out there. You are all a bunch of bright people. A lot of you have backgrounds in education or related to education, and I encourage you to put those little gray cells to work and think about what would be some good things. And the other thing I think, just to throw a couple of other ideas out, is that not all classes need to be Sunday between services. And there is a lot of in the church literature, which I seem to be on the mailing list now for lots of that, the email list, talking about the importance of doing things other than Sunday morning, because people are often busy on Sunday, especially young couples and people with kids. Sundays are not a good time for them, and if we want to do programming that attracts younger people, maybe we need to do more Tuesday night classes, just as an example. The other thing that the literature is saying is that today's parents are looking for more intergenerational experiences for their children. And there is a study program in Northeast Nebraska right now where they're working with some of the smaller churches in that area to do intergenerational Sunday school. So it is Grandma and Grandpa and Mom and Dad and the kids all talking together about a topic like parting the Red Sea or Noah's Ark or whatever, and talking about it in an intergenerational way. There's also research that churches do not form the faith of children, families do. And that one of the reasons that we have lost our teenagers and are losing our children is because we drop them at the door on Sunday morning, and we expect that 45 minutes of Sunday school, and the average kid in an active church family probably comes twice a month, and we think they're going to be good, dynamic Christians the rest of their life, and it doesn't work. That what we need to work with is how we as a whole community and faith family interact and talk with the kids. And that's one of the ideas they push. Don't put the kids in a back corner in church and send them out after 10 minutes. Make them a part of the congregation that we all celebrate. And yes, they need to learn rules. Of course they do. But if you're not actively engaging with them, and they're just here to entertain you once in a while by singing a song and telling a story, they're going to find better things to do with their time. So as we think about programming and things that we would like to do, another thing to put that little gray matter towards is what can we do to facilitate conversations about faith and Jesus in families? So think about that and what an intergenerational class might look like. And I really think, as I've talked to many of you, that a lot of people miss not having their grandkids around. And if we could structure something where we were doing things together that the kids and the adults enjoyed, that would be great. And I still remember when I was a kid after Sunday school, and it was because I was a chatterbox, but people were always asking me, "Oh, Kathy, tell me about what you learned in Sunday school today." And I think I must have been entertaining because I got laughed at a lot. But I also think that it was the culture, that it was important. Those good farm families thought it was important to talk to those kids and to keep that conversation going, and those things stuck with me. So keep that all in mind. I think I've talked long enough. I think the kids are probably done and ready to move on. So any last-minute comments? Jim?
It seems to me a good phrase for us is think outside the box.
Exactly.
And I remember a number of years ago reading about a large church in a large community where there was a college.
Mm-hmm.
And the church didn't have any college students involved.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to reach out to the college students. So they tried some typical things, you know, a Sunday morning class for college students.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't work. They tried it a couple of different other times, you know, Saturday night, whatever, that didn't work. So finally, somebody came up with the idea of offering college kids a class on Saturday morning at 1 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Like 1 a.m. after the bars close?
That's right. And
Just
they
checking.
They had a tremendous turnout and a tremendous experience with those college kids.
Keith?
Well, I have to say, when I was the pastor for 10 years in Wayne,
Uh-huh.
Wayne State University, we had our college group on Sundays, but not at 1 in the morning. I was still writing sermons. No.
And your church administrative assistant was wishing you would have got the bulletin to her before 1 a.m.
Well, but what we found out is that the students came home or came back to campus from home. There was no place to go to eat.
Ah.
So we put on the dinner and they came.
Mm-hmm.
And had a lot of weddings out of that group too.
Let's see. And Dwight, did you have your hand up?
What can we do to encourage, facilitate some of the very basic things?
Mm-hmm.
I was really surprised talking with one of the members of our congregation here, and they never pray at mealtime.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just me, but
Yeah, yeah.
let's see. That wasn't you, it doesn't pray at mealtime.
I knew what you meant, Dwight.
But when I retired, I was surprised to discover that I wasn't using the Bible very much.
Yeah, yeah.
And what was his name? One of our fellow pastors here. Most of his life right now. But I was talking with him one time. He said, I thought about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've used it all the time. I had to use it. But I didn't have to use it. I didn't use it.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah.
So I followed up on it last couple of months. But I decided several years ago during Lent that I was told I shouldn't fast and exercise on the same day. So what should I do if I don't fast on Friday? So I decided, well, I'll read the upcoming liturgy.
Mm-hmm.
Readings, yeah. What's the name for it? Every day we had a different administration. And when Lynn was up, I found it so helpful and it continued.
Uh-huh.
I lost it that last couple of months.
Okay. Well, and what I'm going to say, I want to start drawing things to a close because I wanted to be done by 7:30 and it's 7:45. I would encourage you, as you're sitting around Sunday morning in the fellowship hall, to start talking about these things. You're some bright folk, and I'm happy to help pull groups together, people together, resources together. But like I said, I don't teach, develop curriculum, and organize all adult classes. So think about that. The other topic that I'm just going to throw out there is our garden party will be July 31st. We are looking for ideas for booths, for kids' activities, for fun things to do, ways to attract the neighborhood, so, and things people would enjoy doing there. So get those little gray cells working on that also. And Julie, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah.
All right.
Dad, hold on. You haven't learned your VBS songs yet.
Uh-oh.
The B-I-B-L-E. Oh, come on, we got B-I-B-L-E. There's just one song we really need to emphasize tonight, and that's to mark this very special day for this very special person. Today is Stacy's birthday, and I think we all need to stand up and turn around and sing happy birthday to her. Happy birthday.